welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Well, good morning. Welcome to another session with me here in my booth. I appreciate you being here. It's a rainy day again in Chicago. I'm wondering if we'll ever see the sun again, but we'll try to bring a little sunshine in your life with the reading of our story here. I'm Reverend Mike Lavery. I wrote the book Lucius, A Soldier's Journey, A Man's Search for Truth. We looked a little bit yesterday on the training of Roman soldiers, and we finished by discussing Lucius's transfer. For the past 5 years of his life, he's been training recruits in Rome itself, and he had felt in his heart that this would probably be his final posting, seeing that he had fought many battles. And his body was, as he called it, a patchwork water bottle. He had so many wounds and scars over the years. But now he's being reassigned yet again. Ivan Rockhart comments, "Hi, good morning, Michael. Good morning, Ivan. How are you? Good to have you with us this morning." So he receives word that he is being transferred out. And right now, as we left him yesterday, he's with his commanding officer, Licinius. And Licinius is discussing with him the place where he's going to go. And he's speaking, and Licinius became sullen as he explained, Pilate was a great soldier, a good leader, much like Lucius. He was a determined fighter. Then somewhere along the line, good Pontius entertained the foolish notion that he had figured out the complex problems that confronted the empire. Perhaps he felt as a governor, then a senator, and possibly even Caesar, he could effect changes that would bring tranquility to the empire. Brenda B. Shaw comments, at last time I was here, I left with a lot to think about, hoping for the same exciting story today. Well, I hope you enjoy it. Brenda. We'll sure try. Why would they leave an inspiring military career for politics? Lucius mused. I guess they tire of constant bloodletting. It seems the more blood let, the more blood we are called upon to let, Licinius lamented. Let us now consider the hellhole to which you have been assigned. Our forces in that region are suffering losses on a daily basis to attacks from zealots. These rebel forces are especially strong in the north of the country. This is the main reason troop morale is so low. Israel is a subjugated territory. Therefore, it does have a small standing army and a king. Dealing with Herod, the king of the Jews, is much like playing with a cobra. Herod is a power-crazed madman who cannot be trusted. It is said he had several wives and a son executed that he suspected of disloyalty. Lucius laughed. We should bring him here. He would fit right in. With that, Licinius broke into loud laughter and then put his finger to his lips. Good Lucius, keep your voice down. The walls have ears in Rome. The temple in Jerusalem has its own standing army, and Herod has an army that protects him. The soldiers are well trained and skilled, but we consider them little more than a mercenary army. Lucius shook his head in disgust. Mercenaries. If confronted with an enemy army before me and a mercenary army at my rear, I would attack on both fronts. At this, Licinius burst into hearty laughter. Me too, he cried in response. When at last the two men had composed themselves, Licinius continued, I know that you and your fellow officers have wondered why, in a time of peace, have so many recruits been run through the training facility. This was a cause of concern, because, of course, this was the time of the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. Tiberius has said that peace has come to the then known world, and yet they're recruiting and training more and more raw recruits to send out into the field. And this seems strange to Lucius and his fellow trainers that at a time of peace, the army's ranks should be swelling instead of reducing. So now Licinius confronts this question and he says to Lucius, it has been a topic of some spirited conversation around the table at mess, Lucius responded. The empire is in desperate peril, Licinius confided. Lucius sat in dumbfounded silence for a moment. Then he responded, how so? In the far reaches of the empire, our truth strength is virtually non-existent. We do not have the manpower nor the logistical ability to keep a large army adequately supplied. Licinius once again became stoic. Lucius, what I'm about to share with you now must never go beyond these walls. J.P. Abasilla, he says good morning to you again, Pastor. Good morning, J.P. Glad to have you. What I'm about to tell you must never go beyond these walls. Lucius was alarmed at his commander's almost fatal tone. Perhaps now you can see and understand why it is essential that we maintain a show of force in these areas. It is necessary that we rule with unrelenting ferocity. We must judge all potential threats to our rule with harsh and merciless judgment. We must put forth the illusion of power. We must project an image of strength and control in order to keep the zealots at bay. I see, said Lucius. Correct me at any time if what I say is wrong. If I understand correctly, it will be my task to raise the saggy morale of our troops by transforming this beaten army into an aggressive fighting force with the capabilities of taking the fight to these zealots. Tell me, good Licinius, is my assessment of the situation correct? Licinius nodded his head. You grasp the situation perfectly, Lucius. I'm so very sorry, Lucius. You deserve to finish your career here. But we are soldiers, and that is not our choice, I'm afraid. Your rank will be upgraded to commander, which of course means more pay. Lucius rose to his feet and extended his hand. Do not trouble yourself, old friend. I never really expected to die of old age here in Rome. Licinius laughed, then quipped, It is good to see you have not lost your sense of humor, old friend. Here, have more wine. As soon as I learn the details of your transfer, I will inform you immediately. Lucius simply nodded in response, Then both men sat back to a watery cups of wine. So Lucius, after his meeting with Licinius, he heads home. He's downhearted. He's going to have to break this news to his 3 servants that he is going to be transferred to another outpost. And this one, a rather dangerous one. So chapter 3 begins. Now we're going to look a little bit at the slavery issue in Rome at that time. Lucius had no slaves in his house. However, he did have hired servants. 2 brothers. Oh, Donald Rosenbaum says, "Good day, Michael. It's amazing that military concepts of power and power play remain relevant to this day, especially in the United States. I bet there are many Luciuses out there." Oh, you bet there are. As I said yesterday, if you brought back some of the great leaders of the past, if you could bring back Julius Caesar, if you could bring back some of the pharaohs of the past, if you could bring back men like Alexander the Great, if you could bring these men back, they fit right in to Washington. You could put them in Washington, they'd fit right in. The only thing that's really changed in the human experience is technology. People haven't changed. You know, we talk about, oh, people have changed. So people haven't changed. The technology has changed, but the human attitude has not changed. These men would fit right in. Power, the struggle for power, the use of military force, it's all basically the same. The only thing that's changed is the technology. But now we look and we see in chapter 3, Lucius had no slaves in his house. However, he did have 3 hired servants. 2 brothers, Mark and Arius by name, Greeks by birth. Mark was the eldest. He was bright, learned. He learned quickly. He was tall, strong as an ox. Lucius would make him his personal valet. He would be expertly trained in the ways of war and would stand beside his master at all times. Now, I was brought to task on this. James Lynch Jackson, thank you for sharing such wise words in your readers, to your readers, Reverend. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, James. I was brought to task on this. One of my reviewers said, well, this would never have happened in the Roman Empire. They would not have trained a non-Roman in the ways of war because, of course, being a non-Roman, he may turn on the Roman authority. Well, that's really not true. The fact of the matter is there were many non-Romans. There were many Germanic tribes that were conquered and under Roman authority whose men were given over to the Roman army. There were many Germanic tribesmen who fought in the Roman army. As a matter of fact, I saw an interesting show on the History Channel, Ancient Assassins. Once in a while, the History Channel does have something more than, about aliens. Once in a while, they do have something of substance. And they had a show on called Ancient Assassins. And they showed this Roman unit. It was a specialized unit, very much like special forces today, very much like the Navy SEALs or the Green Beret. They were highly trained special forces. They were sent behind enemy lines to wreak havoc. These men could swim a river in full armor. They could hold their breath for, 3 minutes, swim underwater, come up only to breathe, and swim across a river in full armor. These men were just masterfully trained. The amazing thing about it was not a single one of them was Roman. They were all from conquered territories, subjugated territories. As I said, the Romans always kept their eyes open for good men, for learned men, for men with experience, and they used them to the advantage of the empire. And this included men who were excellent warriors. If you were an excellent warrior, chances are you would not be thrust into slavery, but you would be conscripted into the army and trained so that you could become a fighting man for Rome. All these men in this special unit were all members of Germanic tribes, and not a single one of them was of Roman birth. So the concept that the Romans would never train anybody who was not Roman is really a fictitious comment, because they did. And young Mark was tall, strong, smart. He learned quickly. Lucius had him trained in the art of war, and he became his personal valet who stood at his side. Arrius, his younger brother, was a brilliant inventor. Lucius marveled at the many engines he built to move water, to irrigate the fields. Arrius could fix or build anything to which he'd set his mind. Marguerite, who kept the house and was family cook, greatly appreciated Arrius and his time-saving inventions. Marguerite was of Spanish blood. She had served Lucius many years. She was the mistress of the house and the greatest cook in the world by the account of young Arrius. Margaret was tall, olive-skinned, with large brown eyes and jet black hair. In truth, she was a beautiful woman. The men of the house greatly appreciated her cooking skills, coupled with her cheerful disposition and lovely singing voice. Returning to his quarters after long days on the brutal training fields, Lucius would find his heart raised by the lovely strains of Marguerite's beautiful songs. So here we have a rather happy house. And Lucius had 3 servants who he loved. Lucius had, now we notice something in the next paragraph that kind of tells us volumes about the character of Lucius. Lucius had purchased all of them as slaves. But I have a David Rosenbaum. The Roman Empire incorporated conquered nations, tribes into their army, like the nomadic Samaritans and the countless Germanic tribes. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for backing me up on that, Donald. I appreciate it. Lucius had purchased all of them as slaves, but as his father before him, Lucius would not have slaves in his house. Therefore, at great personal expense, Lucius purchased each one of them their freedom, and then gave each the option of staying and working for wages in his house, and going forth and seeking their own fortunes as free persons was also an option afforded them. Lucius made his way home alone, having sent Mark ahead of him. He walked slowly. His meeting with Licinius still weighed heavy on his mind. So many thoughts raced through his head, not the least of which was how he would break the news to his servants. So he's going home. He's heavy-hearted. He's got a lot of pressure on him. You know, you talk about stress. Stress is something that's not a 21st century thing. It's always been with us. Got a lot of stress on him right now. He gets home to find even more stress, albeit somewhat of a pleasanter stress. Lucius approached the door. His hand had barely touched the handle when the door opened before him. Mark stood before him, a sullen look upon his face. James Lynch Jackson, everyone can learn a lot from your book, Reverend. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, James. Lucius approached the door. His hand had barely touched the handle when the door opened before him. Mark stood before him, a sullen look upon his face. He said nothing, but simply stepped to one side and let his master pass. Upon entering the house, Lucius beheld young Arrius doubled up in a chair. He sat with his head in his hands, while Marguerite gently rubbed his back and whispered softly in his ear. As Lucius approached, Marguerite stood up straight, and Arrius sprang to his feet. Lucius could see Arius had tears on his cheeks and his eyes were red. Marguerite also had tears on her cheeks. To Lucius, this was most unusual, seeing that his servants were not given to much emotion. "What's wrong here?" Lucius inquired in an inquisitive manner. Suddenly a smile crossed Arius's lips. "Master Lucius, Margaret has received splendid news. Splendid news indeed." Arius turned to Marguerite. "Show Master Lucius the letter and share your good fortune with him." Lucius gave Marguerite a puzzled look. "What good news is this?" he inquired. "Master Lucius, do you remember the friends I told you about back in España?" "Yes, I remember," Lucius answered. "If memory serves me correctly, they were conducting a search for your family members. You remember then, good master." With that, Marguerite retrieved a piece of paper from a nearby table. "I received this letter today. It seems after years of searching they have managed to find my mother and one of my brothers." She handed the letter to Lucius, who read it intently. Handing the letter back, Lucius expressed his heartfelt joy and embraced Marguerite. "May I go, Master Lucius?" This inquiring puzzled Lucius. "Of course you can go. You are a free woman." "I know this, but I want your blessing, kind master." "You have it, dear Marguerite. You have it 1,000 times," Lucius replied. "When shall you be leaving us?" This seemed a universal question on everybody's mind. Oh, I have a Evelyn M. Jackson commented, "The Roman Empire is one of the most interesting political entities in the history of the world." Oh, that's true. But actually, much of our government today is based upon um, the Romans and the Greeks. So they passed down a heritage. Some of it was very good, you know, and some of it, well, some of it was not so good. So here we have Marguerite. She's a free woman. People have been searching for her parents back in España, her family. They found her mother and one of her brothers, and they sent her a letter. And she wants to return to España to be with her mother and her brother that she hasn't seen for years. Because she was taken into slavery, and of course Lucius purchased her and purchased her freedom. And when Lucius read the letter, he was indeed happy for her. But she asked him, "Can I go, Master Lucius?" To me, that's a very touching thing. She so loved this man who had shown her such kindness and purchased her freedom from slavery and chains, that she would not do anything without his approval. We have Arita R. Harrison commented, "I love how the author is sharing so many details about the Roman Empire." Well, in order to fully understand the story, you need to understand a little bit of the background. And you're right, the Roman Empire is complex. It was a very complex entity indeed. So now Marguerite is leaving. We'll move ahead a little bit because time is fleeting for us today. And now we see that Lucius is faced with, once again, a horrible, something he despises. He's going to have to go to the slave auction again, something that he actually hates with a great hatred. And he is going to have to go to the slave auction. He was hoping he'd never have to go there again, but he realizes he needs a housekeeper, and he's going to have to go to the slave auction to try to find one. And we're going to pick up, it says, at last the silence was broken by Lucius's announcement. In a voice that could only be characterized as depressed, Lucius announced, Then on the morrow he would go to the slave auction. He would seek a new cook and housekeeper. Lucius hoped he would never have to set foot in that horrid place again. Mark and Arius watched as beads of sweat formed and ran down their master's face. Lucius sat at the table, his eyes fixed and lifeless, as he spoke of that horrid place. The sight of people all chained together, to see in the faces and eyes of men, women, and even children a complete loss of hope. It was like viewing shadows. Then to see prospective masters examining the slaves. Once proud men being examined as one would examine an ox. To witness the fear in the face of a young child being torn from his mother's arms. To see the women being examined. The look of humiliation and stark terror upon their faces as they came to realize the fate that awaits them. Suddenly Lucius began to shake. He wiped the sweat off his face. Arius had never seen his master. Oh, I have Dina P. Schmitz comments, if I could travel back in time, it would be nice to join the Roman Legion again. Well, I don't know about that. It would be interesting, no doubt of it. It would be interesting, but it would be a real. The Romans lived very Spartan. They were extremely Spartan. With quivering voice, he began to speak again. I remember one woman. She was purchased by a big fat senator. I could tell he was a senator by his mode of dress, Lucius. Lucius covered his face with his hands. I remember her face, the look on her face. She started to struggle as they tied her hands and her feet. The big fat man motioned to one of his slaves and he dragged her out by her hair like a sack of meal. As they dragged her away, she started screaming, help me, please. Somebody help me. I want my baby. I want my baby. Suddenly, Lucius sprang to his feet and bolted out the door. Lucius had not eaten much, but both Mark and Arius heard his violent retching. Arius stood to his feet and made for the door. Mark stopped him. He has been haunted by that woman for many years. He feels shame that he did not help her. There was nothing he could have done, Arius answered. I know, but we are talking about Master Lucius. At last Lucius returned, his face ashen, his eyes fixed, as if in a trance. Mark's voice suddenly snapped him back to reality. Master Lucius, I know how much you hate the slave auction. When I think back to being there with my brother, Arius, knowing at some point we would undoubtedly have been sold separately, hearing his cries and mine as we were rent from each other's grasp, knowing we would no doubt never see each other again. The memory of this still gives me night terrors. But then you came into our lives, Master Lucius. You needed only one slave, but you bought two, that my brother and I might remain together. Mark hesitated for a moment, his eyes filled with tears. Then he continued his discourse once he regained his composure. Master Lucius, you gave us hope where there was only darkness. You gave us freedom from our chains. You gave us life when we had all but died inside. Good master, if we could live 10 lives as your faithful servants, we could not begin to repay the debt we owe you. Tomorrow when you enter the slave auction, remember us, good master. Remember Mark and Arius. Remember Marguerite, who is now going to rejoin her family in Hispania. Good master, when you enter that horrid place, remember us, and know that you are there to save a life, in the same way as you saved ours. But dear Mark, I can only save one life, and there are so many, Lucius lamented. This is true, good master. so you will save one at a time." Lucius smiled and nodded as he embraced his two servants, men who he loved as his own sons, as the sons he had never had. So we're going to leave off there today, I should say. And tomorrow we're going to meet a very interesting individual. Her name is Chloe. She's the servant that Lucius is about to purchase. Once again, the book is Lucius, A Soldier's Journey. It's available on Amazon. It's available from Barnes & Noble. It's also available on my website, which you can see at the base of the screen there. And I invite you to purchase a copy, take a read. Let me know what you think. And I sure do appreciate you being with me today. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you. God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same station. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye now.